Hi everyone, Richard Tromans here at Law Punx. Today, another episode, and we're talking to Tara Waters about why the adoption of legal AI is not at all like space race. Take it away, Tara.
Thanks, Richard. I'm fresh back from a visit at the Kennedy Space Center, and this is something that just popped into my mind, and I thought might be a good topic to share here. And to be honest, I just was so astounded, walking around that campus to see the invention and innovation that happened in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even now through to today, and what was accomplished in relatively short periods of time. I mean, inventions of entirely new materials, creation of crafts that took men and women into space, to the moon, to far distant planets, etc. And then I was struck by the fact that many of us in legal have been spending, the better part of at least a decade, if not longer, depending on which part of the sector you worked in, trying to get this industry to properly adopt technology, to think about it holistically, to see it as core to what we do as lawyers and to how we operate our businesses. And I was a little bit deflated, to be honest, to compare and contrast the time frames. In probably under 12 years, the world invented space shuttles, reusable spaceships that could, fly in and out of space and be reused over and over again. And we can't seem to get lawyers to adopt basic technology, much less legal AI, which is coming through in the trials and tribulations of that. And I thought a lot about all of the excuses we make in this industry. I see them as excuses. Oh, the structure, the partnership model. We don't understand investment, which I'll put a little pin in that one because I do think that's one of the critical parts. Lawyers are resistant to change. I think they're just excuses. And I understand, of course, what they mean and how they do impact and make the challenge hard. But when I thought a lot about John F. Kennedy and him laying that gauntlet down in the 50s and 60s to say, we're going to the moon. And what did he do after that? He had a clear vision and mission. He laid the gauntlet down. He set up the infrastructure to make that happen. He invested in ensuring the right people were focused on that problem and were going to solve it. And he held them to account. And there was even a letter in the Kennedy Space Center. I took a picture of it. The letter was kind of silly because it was asking about certain types of fuel. John F. Kennedy didn't know anything about fuel, but he ultimately was asking, are we doing absolutely everything we can as fast as we can to achieve this goal? Because I set out this goal and my personal reputation and legacy is on the line to ensure that we attain this goal within a certain time frame. And I'm just not seeing that in the legal industry. And I've thought really hard about it. And this is not to alienate or point fingers at anyone in particular within the industry, because I believe really strongly that, transformation is possible. And this is why I'm bringing it up. Transformation is possible. We were able to put people in space in the 60s. We can crack this transformation problem in the legal industry now with everything we have at our disposal. But I think what's missing, the leadership from the top, the clarity of vision and mission, the managing partners, the CEOs of law firms, just think they need to be much stronger about what they're trying to achieve, not allow themselves to get distracted by the other challenges of running a business which exist, and to lay the gauntlet down for their people. And then to make sure they invested in the right people and the right capabilities and make sure that they are delivering. And I think that's what's happening. I just see over and over again, at firms I've been in, at firms I observe, what I read, it just seems like there's this constant willingness to make the excuses and allow the excuses to drive the extension of time we're giving this industry to actually transform when the rest of the world is really passing us by. And I just think we really need a shift at the top. I think if the shift at the top does not change, we can have the best people working at some of these firms and in these legal departments and at these vendors. The industry isn't going to move. I think it has to come from the senior leadership of the legal teams, of the law firms, etc., that are really setting the pace, holding themselves to account, allowing themselves to be held to account, and holding other people to account. And I think the critical thing, and that's why I put that point in, is around investment. We have to be willing to invest, time, money, effort, resources in the people that are solving this problem. And we need to be writing those JFK letters that maybe don't make sense entirely, but are constantly asking, is there more we should be doing and how can we be doing it? are we achieving these goals in the time frame that we've set out? And we cannot allow ourselves to keep slipping any longer.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, totally agree on the leadership. On the point about goals, aside from sort of very sort of soft goals of, we're going to bring in Legora, we're going to bring in Harvey, we're going to bring in Co-Counsel, we're going to bring Lexis Protege, whatever. Aside from those sort of, you might say, small goals, do law firms, aside from keeping the business running and increasing profitability, do they actually have any technology goals? I mean, do they have that goal? Because the moon was a beautiful goal in the sense that every night you can see it.
Mm.
And if anyone says, what's the goal here? You go, we're going up there. And you're like, wow, that sounds like a pretty awesome goal. I want to get behind that. Do leaders of law firms have a goal?
I think they have goals. I don't necessarily think the goals resonate with their people, and therefore I think that's part of the challenge and contributes to the challenge in the lack of clarity. I've certainly seen, again, in firms I've worked with and firms that I talk to and observe, there's always something there, but to be honest, to be completely frank, it's lip service. And it's often very, very, as you say, soft and fuzzy. It's innovation, it's transfer. We want to be the most innovative law firm. We want to, do digital transformation. And to be frank, I talk about myself as a consultant on transformation, and I don't love that word, but it's tough to find a better word to use. I think that's a key thing that you've honed in on, which is just the lack of clarity of that vision and mission and what it is you're trying to achieve. And I'm not surprised that senior leadership doesn't necessarily have the words to describe what they're trying to do, and that's not been baked into those strategies as clearly. And I think that's probably one of the things that needs to change. And there's people like me and lots of people like me around the industry that would love to work with some of those leaders to help them define that a bit better.
Yeah. Well, this opens up about a dozen other conversations, but in time-honored fashion, Law Punx is short and sweet, so we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks, Tara.